Serious, theme park workers of Reddit. What unknown privileges do insanely wealthy people receive at your park? Worked at WDW also. Kids between 1-year-old and 16-year-old with wealthy parents would sometimes rent out entire theme parks. One time, Hollywood Studios was rented out to a kid who was, I believe, turning 8. Most of the rides stayed open and multiple bars serving alcohol would be set up for the grown-ups. Full service bars scattered throughout the park. We'd keep the park open a few hours after closing for them to ride the rides privately and get wasted. No idea how much it would cost to do something like that, but it happened quite often. Sometimes the families were the coolest and would have fun, other times they'd be snobs and act younger than the kid having the birthday. For the families who were fun, the employees were usually a lot more relaxed, due to no crowds, and would have fun with them too. In some cases, the group would be on one side of the park and we'd be sending empty ride vehicles around just waiting for them to show up. We knew they'd be about an hour before they'd reach us, so we'd trade rides. So while we operate our ride, operators of another attraction would come ride. Maybe the lights get turned on for things like Rockin' Roller Coaster. Maybe all the lights get turned off and we'd ride it in pitch black. Was a lot of fun to do that. OMG, a roller coaster in pitch black. That sounds awesome and terrifying. I love it. I worked at Six Flags. As most people know, theme parks have different tiers of tickets you can buy, which entitle the customers, or guests as we called them, to certain privileges. That is, base ticket for entry is $45, early admission base season pass $60. What a lot of people don't know is that we had a tier of ticket that started at $500 that gives you a corporate escort that will allow you to cut in at any line at the park 2, unlimited food and drink 3, unlimited rides without needing to exit for another guest first 4, a private air-conditioned lounge area where you can rest. WDW here too. Magic Kingdom, Big Thunder Mountain. At the time, you could always figure out the level of celebrity by their entrance to the ride, like if they just used unlimited fast passes, came through the wheelchair accessible line, or very rarely if they closed down one side. When Jimmy Carter came through with his family, we shut down one half so they could ride on the train alone. A kid in line saw that the train was basically empty and was clearly upset as his mom said, "That's Jimmy Carter." Kid yells, "Who the frick is Jimmy Carter?" Jimmy Carter salutes the kid, and we dispatched the train so dang fast. Side story, I was told when Prince came through the park he never left the tunnels. Jimmy Carter salutes the kid, and we dispatched the train so dang fast. Another reason to love Jimmy Carter. I work at Universal Orlando. One Direction once bought out the park at night after one of the concerts they had. Stayed really late and spent most of their time in the newly opened, at the time, Diagon Alley. They didn't even come to my section of the park, but I got paid, so there's that. A lot of celebrities that come around will either just walk through normally and we're required to act like we don't know who they are, and some buy the super VIP that lets them basically do and go wherever they like. That last option also gives you a personal tour guide. It's like $3,000 a person or some ridiculous number like that. Starting at $3,099 for a party up to 5, not including park admission tickets. Yes, park admissions are required and are not included in the cost of the tour. After 5, there is a per person add-on fee of $350-$500 depending on the date. The average 5-guest party costs around $4,500 after tax, including park tickets. Worked in WDW. Celebrities get guided access to and through the Utilita tunnel system beneath Magic Kingdom if they wanted to get to different parts of the parks the fastest. They mainly only go to the nicer parts though, like the clean and pristine sections under Fantasyland and Main Street, not the gross ones where most of us worked, lol. Though Johnny Depp ends up in the nasty parts of Adventureland to gain access to the elevators that get you up to Pirates. Funnish story, sorta relevant. Mariah Carey was a person we were all told to avoid at all costs. For our own sake, at least in my land, we were told that if we saw an entourage coming that even kinda looked like she'd be in it, to just turn or duck away because she was such a misery. I never ran into her while she visited with her husband and kids, but found it interesting that her behavior was so egregious that our leaders went out of their way to warn us about her. I worked security at a theme park that hosted Cody Simpson for a concert. Apparently he's the Australian Justin Bieber, a title I'm sure he loves. Anyway, somewhat famous I suppose. After the concert, he and his entourage got escorted around the park by several of the security staff and I, well surrounded by several of his own private, large security guys. When he saw a ride he wanted to ride, we walked him up the exit stairs and he got the ride. Not a huge perk, I realize. It was probably pretty nice to bypass every line, while being paid a handsome fee for being there. Most themes parks are also available to buy out for the day. Usually that was just companies having an annual event, but when they only bought a partial day, the park closed early and all the regular guests, anyone without an armband usually, were booted out. I wish I knew what that cost, but it's probably pretty expensive considering the hundreds of employees and utilities it must take to run a theme park. Money talks at theme parks. If you have lots, you can pretty much do what you want, ride what you want whenever you want. No different than real life, I imagine. Worked in WDW, first in resorts and then in the parks. The only major difference I witnessed at the resort was when we set up a late check-in, 11 PM, and cleared the lobby for it. It wasn't even that big of a deal because there were only a couple of people hanging around that late and the store QSR was closing down for the night anyway. In the parks, it differs by who the VIP is and what they decide. Some just go to the park like anyone else, cause a little bit of a stir when recognized but otherwise just spend their day like anyone else. Some do the Keys to the Kingdom tour, like someone else already mentioned, but it's pretty standard and pretty much anyone can do it if they want to pay for it. And then there are the guided tours, where you have someone from guest services with you all day and you line jump and get priority seating, etc. But again, pretty much anyone can do it if they can pay for it. Disney will typically bend over backwards to support any reasonable requests. I know they've cleared restaurants at celebrity requests before, but all in all, during my time there, it was all pretty low-key. Big UK theme park based on bricks. Most celebs get the usual best line skipping products, free stuff, backstage tours. However, we also had someone visit who was royalty from a very oil-rich country, so money no object type deal. The team I worked in had to run around with radios ahead of his family plus 20 strong entourage, trying not to be seen, to predict his movements. When they arrived at a ride, we'd clear out the exit line of plebeians, and let them all waltz in and go straight on. Rumor were, for this service, was a 5-figure sum. They didn't want to speak to, or even be near staff, so everything went through their minders. That's all the antics I was involved in, but I'm sure there was more as they all stayed in the hotel on site. Ah, yes, Masonry World. Work at Sesame Place, in a suburb outside of Philadelphia, specifically in the rides department. Every theme park has those cut the line passes. Cost maybe like $29 for unlimited uses. When you buy that pass, they explicitly say you may have to wait 1 or 2 ride cycles. Oh, these parents couldn't care less about those rules. Since I'm one of the supervisors, I get to deal with all of those complaints. 3 best entitlement stories are someone trying to use it after we closed all of the rides. She made her child cry to try and get on. That was a fun one to say no to. Another one was a dad who let a child spit on my shoe for saying they had to wait a ride since that one was full. Final one was a parent WHO hopped the fence while the ride was running because he didn't want to wait and one of the cars was open on this ride. Not to mention the countless dads who have threatened to punch me in the face for making them follow the rules. Oh man, my daughter is about to turn 2 and I'm excited to take her there next year. Things I am not excited for. Other parents at Sesame Place. Six Flags employee here. It's really less impressive than you think. Six Flags offered several VIP options, which I'm sure you can find online. If I recall correctly, some were as tame as a guided tour and always front of the line, faster than Fastpass, all the way up to renting and closing the park for a day. Usually there will be hosted party nights for certain groups. Food is usually included and for group functions, will be catered special. Yup, my company does this at Magic Mountain. I went 1 year and it really wasn't worth it. Yeah, I got food and a cheap ticket, but there were so many church groups and other companies that I ended only going on 3 rides, due to the 2-hour wait. I work at Universal Orlando and have been for a few years now. We have two different types of VIP tours, ones that are non-private. You share the tour with another group or two that start at around $300 minus park admission, and then private tours, just your party, that start at around $2,500. The latter group is usually celebrities or families that don't want to deal with crowds or waiting in line. They get taken through VIP staircases. If they're celebrities, they'll travel backstage to avoid crowds. They won't use public restrooms, but rather our employee restrooms. They get special meals, free photos, and a ton of other stuff. They're generally some of the most pleasant people I deal with throughout the day. Can't say anything for the celebrities because I don't talk to them. Most are excited to be on the tour and love skipping the lines and the private tour they get all day. If a company wants to rent out the park, they can, with a fee. We've had some major companies rent it out for a night. Microsoft last month, and they get all the rides, merchandise, catering, open bars, all to themselves. Money talks, my friends. This story is about wealthy people at theme parks and privileges, but not linked as the question wants it to be. Not me, but one of my old bosses now works at an indoor theme park in Dubai as head of the rides or something like that. I don't know what it's called. Sorry. I heard from his fiancée, who is my current boss, that one day the royal family of Dubai came to the theme park. They chose a ride to go on and got free access to go on it. They went round the one time and they wanted to go around again, but the employee managing the ride didn't let them because there was a line of people already waiting to go on. Now, for some context, if the royal family of Dubai want to do something, you let them. The family said to the owners of the park and the guy I know that the employee managing the ride was not allowed to work there anymore and that he had to go home to the UK and never come back. That man is now never allowed to go to Dubai again. I hope he got a parade when he got back to the UK. Can't imagine the balls on that guy to tell those people to frick off. I worked at Canada's Wonderland for a few years, but it seemed like every time a celebrity came I happened to just miss them. Wonderland does offer some VIP thing though, which I know most celebrities use. I only saw Adam Sandler using this myself. Basically you just get escorted to the rides by someone and get instant access to ride. Justin Bieber though is another story. Unfortunately I hardly remember details about this, nor do I know how true they are. But I remember some of my friends telling me he spent a good like 5-10k for him and a bunch of friends to only go on 2 rides. I'm assuming they rented it out for a small amount of time, one of which, go-karting, he demanded to wear gloves for. Someone said because he didn't want to touch the steering wheel because he was too good to touch it with his hands. Anyways, I doubt that part is true, but at the same time it's Bieber, so who knows. Aside from that I don't remember much else. Justin Trudeau is apparently always nice and calls people by their name on their name tag. I still regret calling in the day he came to Wonderland. I dunno. I'm not a germaphobe, but I can completely understand why someone would not want to touch a steering wheel on a go-kart at an amusement park with bare hands. Worked at Legoland Windsor for 4 years. Multiple celebs came through during that period, all received different treatment and 3 people in particular stand out. Katie Price, a truly awful woman, would regularly come to the park, demand all the diva treatments, passes, VIP parking routes in and out of the park to avoid regular people, pays for nothing, gets everything and thanks no one. Michael McIntyre also received most of the above. As to whether or not any payments were received for those services I do not know, but in general he was reportedly much more pleasant and fun to deal with and less demanding. Finally Boris Becker showed up one day at the front entrance at about 2 PM well after the morning rush, and as most other people in the park were eating lunch, produced 3 annual passes for him and the kids handed them to me so I could check they were his. Had a pleasant if brief conversation as I scanned them through and he went on about his day like a normal person. Guess who my favorite celeb guest was whilst I worked there? Katie Price, because she has the biggest T. I've heard this joke before. At Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, you can purchase a gold VIP package which gets you instant boarding up the exit on any and every ride you wish to ride. No waiting at all, whichever seat you specifically want, for about 8 hours of the day. The 8 that matter, I believe it's 12/8. There's also a food package that comes with it, but I worked in rides so I don't know much about that. Honestly, it's more a hassle than anything because we have to tell guests that they paid $600 per person to ride any ride at the time they want it, and sorry you have to wait because they have money. It sucks, but hey, when you got the dough. I worked at Universal Studios Orlando for a while running The Revenge of the Mummy. It was a ton of fun. Amazingly, we managed to fit Shaq on our ride vehicles. They had stadium style seating, so the last row was higher up and had more legroom. I'd always get funny looks from larger people when I told them to ride in the last row. Some thought it was a racial thing. Freaking idiots. But when I told them Shaquille O'Neal can fit in the last row, they'd shut right up. To everyone wondering how Shaq fit and doesn't get what I meant by stadium style seating, the floor of the ride vehicle is at the same level but the seats in the rear are higher up so everyone has a good view of the ride show. So in the back row you have quite a bit more legroom than the first row. Even larger people, not Shaq style large, had an easier time fitting in the last row. The Mummy is such a fun ride still. It's gotten a bit rougher over the years but I still enjoy the heck out of it. Also, that clip of Brendan Fraser at the end still cracks me up. Worked at Hershey Park in Pennsylvania as a games clerk. Obama's daughters really liked Hershey and came to the park multiple times with friends. Nothing too interesting. Surrounded by guards. Got to skip all the lines. And didn't have to pay for anything in the park. They got a bunch of game and good tickets. Pretty much what you would expect. But it was cool to see them. Obama's chief of staff came to my theater when he was in town giving his final speech in office. The Secret Service bought me hot chocolate. Thanks, Obama. They get to have even bigger tantrums when they don't get what they want. I know someone who does the VIP tour guides at Disney World in Orlando. One of the funny things they told me was the food issue. They take the VIP all over, all day, and even eat with the guest. The VIP can go to literally any restaurant and it's calmed. The guide will be hoping for one of the higher end places and sometimes the VIP will be tired and just want to get some snack like food at their resort. The guide goes home hungry and maybe 2 hours early versus enjoying a nice $60 steak. Now that I know that, if I ever get one of those VIP tours, I'm going to ask my guide what they like and eat that. Worked at WDW, SeaWorld, and Universal Orlando. With all of them you can hire a private VIP tour guide take you around the park. At this level, you don't use the normal entrance. There is VIP ones so you don't have to deal with security and lines. Speaking of lines, that isn't a thing anymore. You can take them directly to the loading area of rides. Universal had some secret waiting rooms that VIPs could wait in so they could jump right into the pre-show. Some rides have that, then directly on the ride. They also don't just walk from place to place like you do. They will walk off one place and appear in another area of the park. It's kind of hard to visualize, but a lot of rides are closer to each other than you realize. For example, in Hollywood Studios the Disney Junior show is practically next to Rock and Roller Coaster through backstage areas. Meanwhile, Animal Kingdom and Epcot have an outer street backstreet that circles the whole park, which means VIPs can get driven around backstage instead of walking half a mile. At SeaWorld there are a bunch of semi-off-limit backstage areas that only certain tours will see, but you can bet the VIPs get to go to the top of the shark exhibit and look down. For normal people, you are in a tube with the sharks swimming above and around you. There is also VIP seating for shows at all parks, so they don't need to show up 30 minutes before the show to save a seat. They can stroll in 5 minutes before the show starts. Also, if you are a super VIP at Disney aka Tom Cruise or Neil Patrick Harris, you might get to sleep in the Cinderella Castle suite. Everyone else gets picked up by a private van from their hotel so they don't have to wait for buses or trek through endless parking lots. Worked at one in my teens and I can proudly say absolutely none. At my park we treated everyone equally, like the goddamn peasants they were. I think that it was expressly written in our contracts to treat everyone like garbage. I might be misremembering that, but it was at least an unwritten rule or commandment. I worked at an amusement park near DC that was visited by Justin Bieber last year. He was escorted by a bunch of higher up people around the park. They didn't seem to think highly of him. In fact, when leaving the water park he told one of our supervisors to put his shoes on for him, which he refused to do. During one of our big retrainings last year he was brought up and we all agreed that yeah, we don't really like him. Then we have other people like Malia Obama who came to visit with her friends a few months ago and she was just trying to be low-key the whole time and it seemed like everyone from guests to employees was just trying to take pictures of her and she just kinda wanted everyone to frick off. I felt kinda bad for her, but she had at least 2 Secret Service guys dressed as normal guests getting on rides with her friends and all that. It was funny. That would be an interesting job. I got paid to babysit the POTUS's daughter friends and ride roller coasters. On a visit to Disneyland Hong Kong I happened to pop into a jewelry store on Main Street. Partly I was wondering who buys jewelry at Disneyland, but mostly because it was air conditioned. They had little gold decorative ornaments in there, Mickey, Goofy, the castle, etc. that cost more than $5 They were approx snow globe sized. I asked the girl if they ever sold any and she told me that had sold 2 that very day. I still can't quite get over this. Big cultural differences regarding gold over there though. Disney World. Not sure about Disneyland gets all their Coca-Cola products for free. Then they turn around and sell it to guests for $3 a bottle, which is 2-3x the price of what retail outlets sell a bottle. Disney gets it for free because Coca-Cola believes brand awareness they get from being associated with Disney is worth more than the cost of giving the product away. So Disney gets free stuff even though they could easily afford to buy it because Disney. I work on a roller coaster in WDW. Our ride has a separate wheelchair entrance that's near one of our exits and sometimes they will come up through there with a personal tour guide and we'll put them on there. For bigger celebrities we bring them in through the back door. Basically an area of the ride guests don't normally access and we'll put them on the ride. We did this for Snoop Dogg one day, and if they want to go back out the same way they ride twice because the ride has 2 separate stations and only one of them has the back door entrance and the trains flip from one station to another. The most insane version of this I saw was when Joe Biden came to our ride. We cycled out the ride, closed the queue and ran trains until the entire building was empty except for the cast members, and then put Joe on the ride. There were Secret Service agents everywhere and we had to tell them exactly how to evacuation the ride in case it shut down and where we would take them and everything. They also had a security helicopter hovering about 250 feet above the ride as well and it was windy and loud as all heck. That was an interesting experience. Used to work ends for a theme park in Pennsylvania. VIPs got escorts and instant line jumps. We used to have the Obama children, when they were still children, fly over and spend the day in the park. The Secret Service usually camped out in our station and took turns watching them. Most people never knew. Probably will be buried but I haven't seen it mentioned yet. Basically golden tickets. Six Flags made a point during training that anyone with a special exit pass was allowed on. No questions asked, as they were VIPs. Never saw one in my year and a half there, but the fact that I remember being trained on such a rare occurrence shows how much emphasis they put on it. Worked at Universal Orlando. Let Dave Chappelle buy a giant stuffed animal for his kids after he dropped around $100 on the basketball game and didn't win. I worked at a very small, local, family-owned amusement park and we didn't have too many celebrities come, but Noah Cyrus, Miley's little sis, came to do a concert, and after she was done she wanted to ride all of the rides. She rode rides with random people and took pictures with the workers. She was super appreciative of the staff. The band Colt Ford used to come for years to do concerts and would always smoke with the staff that helped set up and clean up after the concert. Owners definitely did not know about this. LOL. My park doesn't even have a fast pass because the lines are usually not long enough to need them. So if you're special enough you get free entry and food. I guess we just keep it super low key. I worked in Cedar Point in the 90s for 2 summers. First of all, I have no idea why it would be a celeb thing to go behind the scenes. That stuff is built for employees and is not at all interesting or even nice. I guess I see it for moving celebs around to avoid crowds, but there is no other benefit. So pay attention. LOL. If you want celeb-like access, what is most important at a theme park? The rides. Members of ACE, American Coaster Enthusiasts, do not wait in line for rides. Have you stood in line for 3-4 hours to get on an awesome coaster? Well, ACE members jumped the line. I think they don't go to parks as individuals and get this privilege. Instead, they arranged to show up at the park as a group. Cedar Point would open a coaster an hour early and let the group in the park to ride the ride again and again. And then they would spend the day jumping line. ACE members vote on coasters, rides and many things about theme parks. Best soft pretzels, cleanest restrooms. So, theme parks want to make those people as happy as possible. Join ACE if you love theme parks and want immediate access to rides. Cedar Fair employee here. Guests can pay several $100s to get a private tour around the park and they get to go straight to the front of the line of any ride all day. However, they don't get as many special privileges as you would think. I think several $100s is a good price to ride Maverick like 60 times. When I worked at Kennywood in Pittsburgh, all the Steelers Penguins and their families got to skip lines if they wanted and to stay on the rides a few times if they wanted as well. It was nothing special really. We had Palamalu insist on waiting in line twice with his kids, which was cool, but most of the local celebrities aren't dongs about it. That was a fun 2 summers. I worked at a water park for a few years. We typically have 1 maybe 2 celebs a year and most were pretty nice. Adam Sandler was pleasant with employees even when they were a bit starstruck and he joked about it. They typically just had a park escort take them to the front of the line. Some of the more annoying ones like Heidi Klum wanted the ride cleared out before she got on, which of course pissed off guests who had to wait an extra half hour online so she could be alone on the tower for a 20-second ride. One ride which she was too scared to go on and came back down after causing a 30-minute hold up. I work at a theme park that also has large concert venue attached to it. People who play the venue often want to come into the park or play before their shows. In order to make sure they get to do what they want without getting hassled, they will get a park escort, which is usually me. The only real perk they get is skipping lines on rides, and simply because it would turn into a mob if they waited like everyone else. Worked at Legoland many years ago. Some famous people walked around like they were completely unknown and would wait in line with everyone else. However, when the Wayans Brothers came to the park, the management rolled out the red carpet 100%, took them behind the scenes of the park, escorted them to the front of every line, had backstage access at the shows, etc. I worked attractions at Knott's Berry Farm. The policy was to just let celebrities go through the exits of rides and board immediately. I personally didn't agree with this policy. Why should these wealthy famous people receive additional special treatment? But the main reason is for crowd control. Keep them moving and avoid attracting too much attention to them so you don't have mobs of fans huddled around them. I had no idea who it was or how wealthy he was, but I worked at one of the photo booths at the end of roller coasters. The dude was dressed like a rock star and he had a hot babe also dressed rockish with him. He bought all of the package plans. All of them. That's about $200 worth of photos. About 40 prints of the same photo of himself and his girl on the coaster in various sizes. It wasn't even a good photo. He handed me a black card and kept asking I give him free crap. Not really a privilege, but the fact he assumed I would give him free crap was enough for me to assume he got free crap all the time. I had no idea who he was and I still don't, but I am sure it was some famous singer or band member there for a concert. I did not give him anything free, but he kept repeating the demand like it would wear me down. No one buys those worthless photos, believe me, and he bought all of them like it was nothing. It was probably 2009 to 2010 at Six Flags during Fright Fest. I worked for a theme park about 5 years ago. These parks have strict rules when it comes to security or cleanliness. If Bob comes in and says that he's almost tall enough and whatnot, we have to tell him that it's company policy and there was nothing we could do. If they'd ask for a manager, the manager would have our back, so that was pretty nice. One particular day, I was working a water ride. Water rides come with a whole new set of rules. Since it's not a water park, we ask of clients to have some clothes on over their bathing suit. I'm guessing that it would probably be too complicated to decide what bathing suit is allowed and what isn't, so they just made it a simple rule to wear clothes over it. Comes in this smug looking guy with his daughter of about 3. I tell him that for hygienic reasons, since there are seats on this ride, we ask for the kids to wear pants over their bathing suits. He gets mad thinking that he's waited the line for nothing. It's understandable, so I tell him that I'll remember his face. He can go grab his daughter's clothes and come back through the exit and I'll let him in without waiting an hour again. He starts berating me about what a dumb rule this is, about how he didn't bring any change of clothes for his daughter. I don't get how you can leave the house for a theme park with only a bathing suit, but okay. And how every other employee he saw didn't mention anything to him, which again surprised me, but whatever. He demands that I call my supervisor, which I gladly do so I can wash my hands off him. It was the time for my break, so I sadly leave without seeing how this situation gets solved. A few hours pass and my supervisor comes up to my ride. He says I had a most. Do you know who that was earlier? I start to wonder if I'll still have a job tomorrow. It was some C-list celebrity, so I ask him what ended up happening. He tells me usually they would have told him exactly what I did, but since they didn't want any sort of social media backlash from this guy, they actually ended up offering him a whole set of clothes for his kid, no charge, so they could enjoy the rest of their day at the park. I'll definitely remember his face now. Working at Lego, we used to get a lot of celebs in. Katie Price stands out where she queue jumped for a ride. Most rich people would go through the exit and hop on to the next ride. Not her. She demanded everyone to leave and clear the normal queue line, which was over an hour waiting time, for her to walk through and get on. That sucked for every other guest. I certainly would have been in their situation. Very upset that I'm so late to this. I'm enthusiastic about my former job as a ride operator for Hershey Park. The first one you don't have to be insanely loaded to get, but for $75 extra you get a fast pass that lets you basically skip the lines of every coaster. If you stay at the Hotel Hershey and get a suite access pass, not entirely sure how it works, one of Hotel Hershey's concierges will follow you around the park for $6, getting you to the front seat of every ride and holding onto your belongings for you while you ride. Basically a mobile locker and a fast pass in one. I've only run into one of them and basically asked him how much he wants to die every day doing his job. He told me that it's not fun at all. Poor guy has to wait in the heat for these people, hold onto their stuff, and doesn't even get to ride anything. He just stands there and watches them have fun. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.